The song Kumbaya was first recorded on a wax cylinder sometime in 1926 by two different people, and nobody knows which recording was first. The words are from a South Georgia dialect, although they are not Gullah, as many of us immediately think. People of my generation know this song as well as we do because Joan Baez recorded it in her high and beautiful voice in 1962. She probably learned it at summer camp. Many of us also learned it there. It became an anthem for those who struggled against the Vietnam War. Now, all these years later, Kumbaya moments are sneered about as useless and trite. I think the sneerers are wrong. In fact, Mark reminded me last night that Paul preached a sermon that suggested that very thing some years ago. The words mean, come by here. I wondered if the word Yah referred to Yahweh, as we often hear in Caribbean music, but it appears to be Hia, come by here. My Lord is attached. It is said that there are only two kinds of prayer. There is thank you. There is no question we do not say that prayer enough. I believe that your theology and or philosophy are immaterial. There should be more noticing and more celebrating, more gratitude. There should be more awareness that what we have doesn't come only from us. We build the future on thank yous. People give more when they're seen for who they are. There's a sermon in that, but it's not this sermon. This sermon is about the second kind of prayer, which is, psst, pay attention. Psst, show up. One of the things at seminary that most transformed my understanding of the sacred was the introduction of the notion of the divine inbreaking into a life, of the indwelling of God's Spirit. If you grew up in a Christian church, you may have learned this far earlier than I did. Please don't hold my ministers responsible. I probably just wasn't paying attention. And while I am a believer in the great undefinable, I've never believed in that God who exists to do what I think I can't myself. If I want a red dress, it's on me to figure out how to get that. Back to that first prayer, let us give thanks for good theology and good therapy. I confess to some irritation upon realizing that the one I call God thinks that you and I should figure out how to make our own peace. I still think it would be faster if there were some peace pollen or such. But that's not the way that works either. We have to make the peace. We are the ones who must come by here. As I was ruminating, I considered the many possibilities of whom we, the UUCSV, or even just UUs in general, might be asking to come by here. Some of us have our gods and goddesses, we might be asking to come by here. Some of us have our gods and goddesses. Some of us have our philosophies. Many of us are seeking to understand which truths exactly we hold sacrosanct. Together, we all affirm principles. We attempt to do that which is good and that which is just. I heard someone say the other day in response to a conversation about that, well, you're just sinners then because you're taking on God. You're taking on God's responsibility. You can't do that. And it's like, but why do we have these if not for that? I suspect that most of us are not waiting for divine intervention. But still, it seems that showing up is necessary. Because what's happening in our communities and our world is not enough. Entreaty is needed. Does it matter if you and I entreat different entities or values? I don't think so. How very you of me, huh? Perhaps as UUs, with our many approaches to truth and understanding, we are well placed to see ourselves as those who must show up. You see signs on churches that say something like God's heart, our hands. I guess our hands, that's the way that goes. Here, what we know for certain is that we have our hearts and our hands. We don't claim to possess divine love, but I think we comprehend the need to put our love to work in the world, using our hands. I hope if the gods came knocking, we wouldn't turn them away. But in the meantime, we're the ones who are called for in this tumultuous time. And perhaps always. We're being asked to show up, to drop into the places most in need of love, to come by here. Our world needs attention in so many places. One of the largest health threats today is isolation. It's true for our kids, as hyper-connected as they are, because that connection is often online. They're discovering that our young men in their 20s are not touched enough. Girls are pretty good at the hugs and I love you. Our young boys don't get that as much from their buddies. Too many of our elders have little or no human contact. And as fewer people go to visit people who are put in nursing homes, they're discovering that chickens work and dogs work and these things work, but they work because people aren't being touched and visited and included. Although, please, if you're around when that happens to me, I really don't like chickens. Please, some of you are younger than I am. Make sure no chickens. And if I say I like them, then really work on the dementia drugs. I had a bad chicken experience. As a faith community, we have the antidote for that longing. People can come by here. We can go by where the people are. I was standing with Scott the other day after church, and we looked over at Kim and Jessica having baby conversations, and I have to tell you, my heart swelled. It makes me so happy. Both these moms have tiny babies with some rather outsized problems. They knew each other in high school, but reconnected here. Is that right? I'm right on that? Maybe they would have run into each other in the grocery store, or I don't know, somewhere. But this is a place that is built for conversation and connection. When you don't want to be alone, come by here. As we said, Sarah and I spent the year teaching and preaching about what it means to be welcoming as a community and providing opportunities to practice that welcome. You showed up. When I see these connections happening, I rejoice. There is probably not a walk that Sarah and I take that does not include some giggling and jumping up and down. We're on the lookout for things that are working, and we thrill to find them. And you do them, and they work. When you want to be in community, come by here. And about this time of year, every year, the building is overtaken. It is, as you may have noticed, yard sale season. We walk carefully through new aisles and work hard not to be seduced by all the stuff that is just calling our names. Although chaos does come calling, there are those faithful who come here to do battle, who day after day, week after week, year after year, make sense and then dollars out of those piles. As community, we rely on the money that comes from the yard sale. More and more, however, we understand how much we need the community that develops from those who serve faithfully over the long haul and who invite the rest of us in for those last rushing, thrilling days of the sale. If you think thrilling is too grandiose a word, you haven't been there when you see the cash coming in on that first day of the sale, or have waited for the sales amount to be announced at the end of the day. The sale is both celebration and foundation, financial and communal. It is a huge invitation to come by here, you respond. These little examples are reminders that when we follow this song's advice, our thoughtful, loving, and resourceful presence changes things. But love, reflection, and resourcefulness are needed in more than our little community. Much is asked of us. We say, easily in this crowd because we're good at words. Deeds, not creeds. But what are we to do? Well, why not come by here and we'll figure that out. There are things in the world that need our faithful and gentle touch. In the way of all things, I missed an organizing meeting, but it seems that Sunbury Together is going to have a community gathering on May 30th. We're going to offer toiletries to people in need. Big surprise, there are people in needs, but and we were chosen to do, what do you think? Pads and tampons. I have just the barrel to help fulfill this. Please don't hide it, or if you have to hide it before we get ready before it happens, put it in my office. We have to pack those period products up and go by there. Because after we've figured things out, isn't that what we need to do? Get up and get going. UUCSV is not the only place the divine is called, or that the people are called to get out and come by here. If people are in need, we need to show up. People started to talk about food for this event, but it turns out that the 30th is smack dab in the middle of Ramadan. So why serve food if some of us can't eat? And finally, Sonia offered an incredibly generous solution. She said, why don't we break fast together? Not just the people who come to help, but everyone, and also the people who came to get the toiletries. They said they'll provide. It is such a generosity of food and of heart. It is such a generosity of trust that they will allow us, they will stand in the center of Sunbury and break their fast and allow the world to see the mosque at work. I'm going to see if Sonia will share her lentil soup recipe, because that's what they break with in their family and in her community, so that we can make a vat or two of that ourselves. That way the mosque doesn't have the whole burden of food. I'll get the information out to you when I get it, and if you can, I hope you'll show up. I'll send you that too. You might want to consider fasting that day, if not the whole day, part of the day. And if you remember, if you're sick or nursing or a child, you don't fast, so we'll get that. But we might want to follow their path to observance and service. It's a rare opportunity we're being offered to be present to people unlike us, to people who are willing to love us. I'm always interested that the Jews and the UUs are the people most welcoming to the Muslims, and that with whom they feel the most akin. And we have almost nothing other than Unitarianism in common with the Muslims. We're far more liberal on so many ways than many of them, and yet they feel welcome here. We have a Quran that they gave us in symbol of that. We've been invited to go by there. But in this exchange, as we figured this out, there was not only an invitation to come together, but also the invitation to go out and help other people understand why, when you're going to commemorate the fast, you don't want to offer cookies and soda in the middle of the event. Especially if you're offering people the chance to participate later in something not everyone gets to the opportunity to participate in. Our principles call us to go that extra distance, to explain what was difficult to grasp, so that Sonia wouldn't have to explain to other clergy why it was disrespectful to have food. We're being asked to go by there, not to assuage some need, but rather to honor their beliefs and their observances. There are more and more reasons for us to step out in the world to go where we're needed. I've been reading the literature from the Poor People's Campaign, and almost half the population of this country is either living in poverty or is one major disaster away from it. I was talking to Taylor the other night, and he said that what gets held out as hope is that if you're poor and can go for 20 years without a major disaster, which means a broken fan belt or a sickness or something like that, you won't be poor anymore. How many of us live through 20 years without I mean, even those of us who have more money, there are times when it's like, and how much worse is that? So it's interesting to see our social service groups working together differently, ways they never had before. Sam works with a Connections Coalition who meets here once a month. They are mostly Northumberland County service providers who are building connections among them for their clients' sakes. This is something new. It's happening because there's too much need. The agencies need to know who's offering which services so that they can help their clients survive. This is going by there. And we're involved simply because we're making a place for it to happen. The Love Project, Love. Period, the charities of the quarter are ways that we go by there. In the time ahead, there may need to be more ways, but right now, there is plenty to do with what we're doing. What's important to remember is that we have the power of agency. We can be those who come by here. We can be those who go by there. Whether coming or going, our work is the same: to connect, to support, to celebrate. When we sang this song before the sermon, we were calling out for someone else to be present. It's always easier when it's someone else, right? To us and to the joys and the ills of the world. I want to take advantage of Jeannie and her guitar and Dee and ask us to sing it again. We're only going to sing 4 verses. The first, the second, the 5th, and the 6th. We'll remember that. We'll stand up, but wait a minute. But I want us to sing it considering that we are the people who are called upon. And remember, as you sing this, it's a spiritual. It's meant to have harmony. It's meant to have rhythm. And this time, instead of singing Kumbaya, let's consider singing Go By There, My Friends. Go by there. Oh, let us go by there. You too? 401, I believe it is, right? My friends.